This episode of Embur is brought to you by me. You can support my silly little efforts at either of these places, which you can find somewhere in the description. Thank you. Let me ask you all a question. Could Cornwall ever leave the United Kingdom? The answer is of course it couldn't. Don't be stupid. Wait, you were expecting a proper video from this? You were? Right, okay. For many years, the kingdom, duchy, county, and eventually unitary authority of Cornwall, or Care now if you prefer, has been in a continuous state of legal limbo as to what the region truly is in relation to the rest of England. Depending on who you ask, Cornwall is either a sleepy little county or a fully fledged state, a holiday resort or a suppressed people group, a county in southwest England or an estranged nation in the Celtic sphere. What is agreed upon by both sides, though, is that Cornwall is a rather elusive land, blessed for centuries with mountains of tin, rather nice beaches, and strange people with funny accents. The peninsula has been sought after by almost every single group that's laid eyes upon it. The question of just what Cornwall truly is has bounced through English politics for about as long as there's been in England. Some prefer to see Cornwall as just another county, no more deserving of independence than somewhere like, say, Lincolnshire. On the other side, many others see Cornwall as a land destined for devolution, or even total independence outright. Perhaps, by the end of this video, you'll decide which side of that fence you sit on. But before any of that, though, we need to ask the question, could Cornwall ever actually leave the United Kingdom? Before the English came along and gave them their mildly funny name, the idea of Cornwall didn't really exist yet. The area was originally controlled by the Kingdom of Dumnonia, a Celtic sort of kingdom, which I briefly talked about over on England in Beta, if you remember that. I mean, I guess you could kind of consider this a weird semi-England in Beta episode, I think. Dumnonia was a pretty rich tribe for the time, making a small fortune off of the back of their plentiful tin mines, an industry that was especially prevalent during the rule of the Romans. In the 6th century, the Kingdom of Wessex decided that the eastern half of Dumnonia would look a lot nicer under their control, naming the land after their favourite company in the Pokemon lore. In fact, the kings of Wessex loved the lands of Dumnonia so much that they named it twice. They named the half that they didn't control Cornwall, quite literally the headland of foreigners. For a few hundred years, the status of Cornwall was one of It certainly didn't govern itself, being firmly under the suzerainty of the King of Wessex, but it wasn't actually part of Wessex itself, it was just Cornwall. This ambivalence was part of what allowed the Cornish nation to maintain their own distinct culture, separate from the newly conquered territories. After Wessex gobbled up the remaining Anglo-Saxon kingdoms, as well as the remaining Viking fiefs, Cornwall would keep its strange, unique position of Cornwall's autonomy was maintained due to its unique culture, and its unique culture was maintained due to its autonomy. Like a weird, accidental political symbiosis. Unfortunately for the people of the peninsula, that autonomy would eventually meet its end. William the Conqueror was a man not fond of autonomy. To him, the people of Cornwall were no different from that of the people of Wales, just another set of peoples that needed to be brought under his ironclad banner. Despite this, he was somewhat lighter on the people of Cornwall compared to their Welsh counterparts. William would, instead of placing his own friends and relatives in charge like with the rest of England, placed multiple of his closest allies from Brittany, a region that themselves were Cornish only a few hundred years prior. For a few centuries, even after the peninsula was firmly brought under the banner of England, Cornwall and the people that inhabit it were still generally regarded as separate, in the same way that Wales was considered separate. Throughout much of the late medieval period, documents regarding Cornwall's prosperous tin mining deposits were written as being within Anglia e Cornubia, England and Cornwall. Ironically, it wasn't until a noble house from a fellow Brythonic nation came to power in England that Cornwall would begin to meet its end as a nation in its own right. After the Cornish Rebellion in 1497, following an attempted taxing on the region, tensions had reached a boiling point between the two sides. And so, following the Tudor King Edward VI enforcing English language and prayer across the country, the people of Cornwall and the Crown had finally had enough of each other. During the Prayer Book Rebellion, the English crown took an absolutely no-nonsense approach to dealing with the Cornish rebels, completely wiping the county clean of all of its landed gentry in a campaign personified by its rallying cry: "Kill all the gentlemen, and we shall have our 6 articles back." As their cry would suggest, they did very much kill all the gentlemen. It's believed that up to 20% of Cornwall's population perished during the Prayer Book Rebellion, a statistic that's believed to have caused the ultimate decline of the Cornish language throughout the 17th, 18th and 19th centuries. Following the rebellion, any special status that Cornwall had as an entity was completely stripped. From the late 16th century onwards, Cornwall as a location would be treated as just any other county in England. For the Crown, and likely many Englishmen in the know, this was seen as a job well done. For the Cornish, however, that wasn't so much. This wasn't just a travesty. This was a death blow to their entire identity as a people and as an ethnic group. From here, being Cornish wouldn't get much easier. From the Victorian era and into the present day, Cornwall has been of little regard to the rest of England. By 1800, the native Cornish language had all but gone extinct in the spoken form. In fact, after the tin mines dried up in the 19th century, the county became little more than a holiday resort for English holidaymakers, leading to its modern stereotype of being populated with nothing but old people and the second homes of rich Londoners. As the older, more adamantly Cornish population found themselves replaced by a younger, more globalist generation, the pessimistic view in the crowd would think that all would seem to be lost, and that the Cornish identity would go the same way as our old friend Occitania, becoming the kind of cultural identity only cared about by stubborn locals and, amateur YouTube historians. Of course, no culture dies without a bit of kicking and screaming, so the Cornish identity certainly hasn't gone down quietly. Ever since it became clear that the Cornish culture was on its way out, there have been a number of people who've dedicated themselves to the revival of Cornwall in one way or another. The first of these men was one Henry Jenner, a scholar and activist who championed the attempted revival of the Cornish language. He would go on to publish a handbook on Cornish, allowing even the most downtrodden of working-class Cornishmen to catch a glimpse of the language of their forefathers, and maybe even learn it as a second language. Thanks to the groundwork that he laid, the Cornish language went from an extinct relic of the past to a budding second language, with around 5,000 people who claim to be able to speak some degree of Cornish. More modern efforts, of course, can be found in the work of Mebyon Kernow, perhaps the largest political party advocating for greater autonomy and the promotion of Cornish customs and values in the lands west of the Tamar River. The group has even been trying to denounce the use of the word county for Cornwall, preferring the word Duchy. Whether these ardent sons of Cornwall achieve any of their goals is yet to be truly seen, but you could say that they're certainly trying. Some folks, however, have turned to less savoury means to reach their aims of Cornish freedom. One such group is called, I kid you not, the Cornish National Liberation Army, or CNLA for short, a group with sadly very little imagery to their name, that in 2007 threatened multiple English celebrity chefs in their restaurants in Cornwall, and threatened to, and I quote, this is a real quote from The Guardian, destroy all St. George flags. I can't say I was aware that we had our own branch of Team Rocket over here, huh? Well, now that we know the region's history, can we finally answer that question? Could Cornwall ever truly break free from England's tight grasp and make its proper debut on the world stage? The answer is, well, maybe. Probably not. While there are certainly folks out there who want to see Cornwall cast off its chains, the actual outcry isn't that strong. In fact, most of the major Cornish advocacy groups and political parties are generally fine with sticking around in the UK. They just want Cornwall to be seen more akin to somewhere like Wales than somewhere like Devon. If England were to ever, collapse into anarchy, then yeah, Cornwall would probably want to see itself out of that mess. But until then, it's unlikely that Cornwall will remain anything more than an English county, with unique culture and maybe some special privileges here and there. On top of that, could Cornwall even make it out in the world as its own country? Does Cornwall have the resources, the manpower, the leadership, and the national will to even come close to being a functionally independent country? Well, that's a question that I, unfortunately, don't have time for at the moment. So, stick around and join me next time as I break out the charts and statistics and blow your mind with some facts and numbers about everyone's favourite peninsula named Cornwall, as I talk about statecraft and whether our little county could truly make it as an independent state. But for the Cornish, however, it wasn't so much. This wasn't just seen as a tragedy. A tragedy? What the f*** is that? Is that a word? Hang on. No. It's got an Urban Dictionary page. Tragedy, a logical combination of tragic and travesty, otherwise known as a false or distorted representation of extreme distress or sorrow. Thank you, Lord Remus, on May 6, 2010.